We're here to fix the machine.
Battlefield Live.
You're listening to the Battlefield Live with Chris and Trey from the Lanterns Radio Network, WSHO 800 AM. I want to thank you for joining us on the battlefield today. And we, as always, have a lined-up show, ready to go, about to start swinging the bats. And so how's your day going, Trey?
Man, it's Friday, right?
It is Friday.
This is Friday.
It is the Friday show. Yes, it is.
Man, look, I don't know if I'm getting older, but like, weren't we just here?
It seems like we were just here.
I'm surprised. I'm totally blown away by the recent progression of events that have transpired. I mean, I never saw it coming. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I'm completely confused and I'm bewildered.
And what do you relate? Did you look in the mirror today?
No. I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that Hillary Clinton's probably going to be the nominee for the Democrats.
Well, I mean,
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. I mean, they do run a very, very fair Democratic Party, the nomination process.
I really feel bad for Bernie.
But I don't feel bad for Bernie.
You don't feel bad for Bernie?
No. I mean, I don't feel bad for any of them on that side of the
I guess when
fence.
I say feel bad, I mean, like, don't you almost feel like you do, like when you see like a 3-year-old fall down a flight of steps?
It would be kind of like seeing like a guy that like Charles Manson in jail. I don't really feel bad for Charles Manson, even though he might do a good thing from every now and then. I mean, I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders is Charles Manson.
Does he have a humanitarian side?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe he.
And what about Charles Manson?
Well, maybe he likes cats or something, or kittens.
Yeah,
you know. I mean, I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders is Charles Manson, but I'm saying that his mentality would lead to a Charles Manson.
No. You might be onto something because Ted Cruz was the Zodiac killer.
That is true.
So, hashtag Burn is Manson.
Burn is Manson. That is it. Bernie's Manson. You know, hey, look, you see what happens when you give me coffee, dude?
So is this what we're faced with now? I mean, does it really come down to this? Are we officially now, you know, we're like, a little bit less than a month away from both conventions?
Yeah, I mean, now we're at the point where it's a very tough decision between Hillary and Trump.
So it's kill Trump, right? That's what it is? It's Hill Trump?
I guess. I mean.
When will you announce who you're voting for?
I will never announce.
You won't announce?
I won't announce. Not this go around.
I plan to announce.
Yeah, I know
Not
everybody's
today.
disappointed. You going to announce today?
Not today.
So you are going to announce.
I will announce on the show before. So if we're still doing a Monday night show, I will announce on Monday night before the election who I'm voting for.
I'm going to hold you to that.
But I'm not. In the meantime, I'm just going to continue to expose.
So will this be the one of the two?
At this point, I don't know yet. I really don't. I have no clue as to who I'm going to vote for.
So you realize that Trump has now abandoned the Lying Cruz moniker.
Lying Ted?
Yeah, or Lying Ted, yeah.
Okay.
He's actually abandoned that now.
Well, that would make sense.
Yeah, he's now saying...
It'd be kind of weird if he was still running around talking about Lying Ted.
Yeah, so basically... Well, I mean, that's the thing. So this is what he said, okay? So Trump told...
Tourette's or something.
Yeah, and I'm actually on the Daily Caller now, and I'm trying to focus on the words on the screen.
All right, there you go.
Rather than what's on the right-hand side. Like, on the right-hand side of the Daily Caller right now, I'm getting, forget about Zika. This stunning woman is the only reason you need to go to the Olympic slideshow. Okay, the other one is that this 3-minute supercut of the sexiest moments in film will make your jaw drop. That is what the Daily Caller has become. And for whatever reason, I still come to this site. And I'm just saying, so God forgive me for looking to the right. Okay, so this is what Trump has said. He said, so we started off with 17. When you have 14, 12, 10, 9, 6, people even in the New York... all right, bear with me, folks. This thing jumps around on the screen. So it says 2 guys, Ted Cruz and John Kasich, but I had 3. He said, and this doesn't make any sense, by the way. I'm reading this, and I can't make anything about what this guy is talking about. Right. He said Trump appeared to be noticed. He said lying Ted Cruz, the moniker he branded the Texas Republican with. He says, no, I want to save that now for Hillary. Lying Hillary. Lying. She is such a liar. So now it's lying Hillary.
So has he abandoned crooked Hillary, though?
I don't think he's abandoned crooked Hillary. Because
I kind of like crooked Hillary.
Well, you saw the tweet that he came out with the other day?
Yeah, she told him to delete his account.
Yeah. Did you see the Joy Behar tweet?
No.
And we can't mention that on the radio.
Yeah, please. Oh, is that bad?
It's that bad.
Oh, I just thought you meant because it was Joy Behar.
Well, she's that bad, too. I mean...
It's like you don't even want to look at her on radio.
Yeah. So basically, she said something to the effect that she loves Bernie so much that she even wants him to...
Hey.
Yeah, she said... But she said something to the effect that she wanted to have relations with him because she loved him so much. But
who really loses in that situation? I mean... Because it's almost like, remember when you were a kid, you used to play the game, What's Grosser Than Gross?
Yes.
Right? What's grosser than gross? Sliding down a razor blade into a pool of alcohol? Or sliding into a pool of razor blades? What's grosser than gross?
Right.
So, like, what's grosser than gross? I mean, if this is a situation where them two hook up, Joy Behar and Bernie Sanders hook up, who loses in the grossness category?
I'm losing right now.
That's like a grossness battle royal,
I mean,
right?
you really put this on top of me, dude. I'm like, I got this image in my mind now. I lose out.
Like, so who has to end up getting heavily inebriated to consummate that relationship?
I think that Joy Behar lashes out like one of those spiders that kills the mate.
Like a praying mantis.
Yes, a praying mantis. That's what it is.
She begins to just rip his head off.
Yes. Okay, so I'm getting off the Daily Caller.
Please get off the Daily Caller.
Yeah, see what happens? We talk about Joy Behar and Bernie Sanders getting on.
Relationship.
Yeah, this is very, very, very bad. So, all right, so Trey, this is what I wanted to talk about today. I actually talked to our good friend Rob Godet over at Godet.media.
Hey, Godet Media.
Yeah, so I went over there today, picked up my fantastic shirts. If you're watching us on the cam here, what is this called? Is this the Battlefield cam?
At WSHO.
It's the Godet.media cam.
If you go to WSHO, click the Watch and Listen Live button, and you'll be ushered into the studio here at WSHO.
And the very, very large round guy with the Lanterns shirt on.
Oh, yeah, clarify that.
Yeah, all right, so that's Chris, all right? And this shirt I got from dh-promotions.com. It's awesome. I met Marshall. He got me my shirts. I got one for Barbara. And
that's his wife, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. So I was talking with Rob when I went to go get the shirts today, and we had a very interesting discussion. And it actually went from more of the business type of discussion to a philosophical, cultural discussion.
You got philosophical with Godet?
Yeah, it is amazing how smart Rob is too. I thought Rob, he's a business guy. He actually was one of the co-founders of the Tea Party Patriots.
You just kind of take it for granted that he's just another pretty face,
right? I mean, he's definitely he's not on the radio or on any media with us, but he's the better looking of the three,
without a doubt.
Right. So
there's nobody that can rock a scruff quite like Rob Godet,
and he's a soccer player, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So I mean, he's much older than us too, right?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay.
We look like about 5-10 years older than he is. Anyway, so I sit there talking with Rob, and we were talking about like cultural issues. I don't even know how we got into discussion. And he brought up a point, and I agree with, but part of it I didn't agree with, and we kind of, I guess we just never really got off of the battlefield or onto the battlefield,
right?
Of ideas. We just kind of like put it up there, and I thought it'd be a great thing to talk about. So here it is. Check this out. So I was talking about how I believe that the culture is much worse than it used to be.
Right.
In other words, look at television, look at social media, the vulgarity. We were talking about Milo Yiannopoulos and his tactics, and he's running around with this new tour. I can't even say what he calls his tour on the radio.
Please don't.
Right. So, and basically Milo is an alt-right Trump supporter, and he's kind of like he's homosexual. And
he's a white British homosexual Jew.
Yeah, and who's
conservative, and actually alt-right is the better example.
Yeah, and think of like maybe a Howard Stern times 10.
Yeah, and younger. So he's a millennial.
Right. And so he really connects with millennials. And I agree with some of the things he said, but I got to get past all the pornography language.
Correct.
You know? And I mean, I subscribe to his podcast. I'm trying to understand the culture and things like that. So I was talking to him. I said, I'm really worried about this alt-right movement, and I'm really trying to assess where we need to go with not only our radio show, but like, how do we address this new culture?
Right.
Right. And so my point was that the culture is changing in a way that makes me really worried. And I think it has a lot to do with Marxism. I ain't getting all that stuff today, but
it's weird. I had a conversation with a guy yesterday about this same thing. So
all right,
that's cool.
Awesome. So as always, we're right on into
right. All right.
Right. So I'm talking to him
and also, by the way, I hate to keep interrupting you, but like, I took the opposing position. I don't think that the culture is actually getting worse.
That's what he said.
So that's interesting. So we can still go.
That's what Rob said.
So let's just have this organic conversation anyway.
Awesome. I love organic. I guess I'm taking a liberal position.
Pretty good. No, I like organic too.
I'm drinking organic coffee, I guess.
Are we? No, I don't think Starbucks uses organic.
Maybe not. Don't even say Starbucks. I hate Starbucks.
Did I say Starbucks?
Do they have another coffee place downstairs?
I don't think. Not in this building.
This is what happens when you drink coffee. No, ADD kicks in.
They do have another coffee place, but it's just like a little Indian guy who has a corner store inside the building.
It might be better.
Well, it's community. You like community coffee?
Yes, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's like plant coffee, right?
So we're going to hook that up next time. All right, so check this out. It's going to take us 50 minutes to get through this topic with the coffee.
That's all right. Go ahead.
All right. So basically, my point was, actually, let me say his point first. So he said that there's things that we control and there's things that we can't control. Right. In other words, we have a circle of influence, which is like our direct family and ourselves, our health, and all these different things. And then there's a part that we can't control, and the culture happens to be a part of that thing we can't control. Right. And I told him that I didn't necessarily disagree. In other words, I do believe that I can't, make a statement on Twitter and have it change the culture, right? I have to start at the very, very bottom floor, right? So I agree with him in that point, and his point was like, don't change who you are, which I am not. Don't change who you are. Don't change your program. You just need to continue doing what you're doing, right? So, and I agreed. I said, but Rob, this is how I look at it. I said, I believe as well as Trey does in a worldview that happens to be a biblical worldview.
Right.
And I said, I don't have to be a guy that can recite the Bible from memory. I don't have to be a guy that goes to church every night. I don't have to be that person in order to be someone that's subscribed to the biblical worldview. In fact, the biblical worldview came before an American worldview.
Sure.
Right? So I can be American and be on the same plane as the biblical worldview.
And just for the listeners out there, we are not equating holding a biblical worldview, and we're not talking salvation. Okay?
Right.
You can ascribe to a biblical worldview, and you can still die and go to hell.
Exactly right.
So we're just talking about overall, if you interpret things through the lens, trust me, if you hold a biblical worldview, eventually you'll get to the way, the truth, and the life.
That's exactly right. And so the job of the secular humanist, which is another religion and another worldview,
absolutely,
their job is to eliminate the biblical worldview because it opposes their worldview.
Correct.
So what I was telling him was that in order for me to be able to affect the culture, I have to start at my worldview. I have to embrace and understand the principles of my worldview.
Correct.
Then I have to be able to reach out, and I have to be able to influence with my values, my behavior, as well as other people's behavior.
Correct.
And then I have to work through that behavior, and then I have to reach out to the culture. And I said, the people that I talk to on the radio that are listening, you people that are listening right now, all the people that are listening on the radio right now, they're listening for several different reasons. Some of them just want to hear our opinion. Some of us may be thinking that we are very intelligent and that we may be able to offer a bit of perspective in order to be able to affect the behavior of their child.
Right.
Right? Or the future of their life or whatever. All these different things, these facets that we provide on radio.
Correct.
Have some kind of value for people that are listening or that wouldn't be listening in the first place.
Correct.
So my point to him was that I am not out trying to simply just change the culture by addressing the culture and talking about culture. I understand my values through my worldview, and I'm trying to be the best person I can be with my behavior and the things that I do, and I'm trying to affect and influence other people's values and be able to explain how these values work and their timeless principles. And at the end of it, that's exactly right. So, and at the end of it, if I continue to do that, and I work through my community to embolden the worldview, the values, the behaviors, that eventually it'll change the culture.
Correct.
So when he was talking about the things that I can't control, I can't jump right to the culture.
No.
I have to start with my worldview.
This is actually part of the abject failure of the modern, or I should say the postmodern Christian church.
That's exactly right.
The postmodern Christian church has basically done three things with the culture.
Right.
They have either rejected the culture, they've either rejected it, they've allowed it in, or they've tried to reform it.
Right.
So either one of those three, they're dealing with the wrong thing, and they've been taken away from the core mission of an institution like the church, which was to reach and disciple individuals.
Right.
Because if you do go as far as the idea of salvation, and you are then given the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, you are going to view things through the lens of a biblical worldview.
Right.
So that your worldview gets planted that way, or you work backwards from this, like you just described.
That's exactly right.
So either way, you end up with the culture changing, but you're not going to be able to go into the culture and affect it without absolutely needing to affect those other things.
So let's expand this from our worldview to other worldviews, right? Because we're in a competing world now in America.
Absolutely.
So there's no longer a biblical worldview, solely a biblical worldview like there was in the 1800s, in 1700s, and so forth.
I still believe that it's still the predominant worldview in America.
But I think it's
no longer the loudest.
It's not the loudest, and it's not the it's predominant, but it's not. It's through proxy. It's like through the way our system's set up.
Correct.
Right.
It's almost like residuals.
Yeah.
It's the effects of whatever's been left over from 100 years ago of work.
Right. And what's amazing about America is very hard to kill. Right. Because of this resonance.
That's right. Well, that's what was it Stalin? Stalin said if you want to kill America, you got to kill its religion.
Yeah.
You got to kill its education, and you got to kill its patriotism.
And that's exactly right. And the reason why is because all three of those things believe in something.
That's right. So
right.
Believe in something greater than just yourself.
Right.
There's something bigger to be motivated by.
Right. So in order to be able to tear those things down, you have to have an opposite worldview, which is a nihilistic worldview, or a Marxist-Leninism is a worldview. Right?
Is it surprising to anyone that millennials today are reading more than at any time in the recent record people like Nietzsche and Kant?
That's exactly right, because it's a competing worldview, it's a biblical worldview, and the people that live in this other world, this other worldview, are giving that information. So they're not reading Bibles anymore.
That's correct.
They're not reading classical literature.
That's
now
right.
They're reading Marx, Engels, they're reading Kant, Hegel, Rousseau, all these different people that influence an opposing worldview to biblical worldview.
Yeah, this is where you hear a lot of, and I've guest hosted the show, the one before ours, and I've done entire shows explaining the difference between classical education and what we now call traditional education in America.
So let's do this. Let's take our first break.
All right.
And when we come back, I want to dig into the opposing worldviews and how they conflict and work against each other, and see if we can maybe come to a head to that way with all the audience can try to really explore where their real worldview is. So stick with us on the Battlefield live, folks, and we'll be right back after the short pause. We're at WSHO 800 AM in New Orleans. We'll be right back on the Battlefield with Chris and Trey. Stick with us.
Saints of New Orleans, it's time to go marching in. And it's time to go marching in with Pastor Ed with today's Sunspot.
Hey there, how are you, my pal? You doing good?
I'm doing good, Pastor Ed.
Oh, I've got a good one. Years ago, a young man called me, a pastor called me. He said, Dr. Ray, I need your help. I have a guy in my congregation who always goes me. His father is the president of the congregation. He said, I know he's putting me on, And I try to speak with him lovingly. I said, listen, buddy, I've been through that. I've got the answer. And it's written in Colossians, the 4th chapter, verse 6. I'm laughing. This is what it says. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt. And I add pepper. Talk to him lovingly, seasoned with salt, and let him know that you know what you're talking about. And then say, and that's the answer that God has given for me to give to you. You know, there are people who always pick on young pastors. They did that to me once, and I used that Bible passage from Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt. It's a good one, huh?
Well, you're a good example of that, Pastor. That's for sure.
I'll talk a little bit more about it on my Sunspot on Tuesday.
All right, Pastor Ed. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend. God
All right.
bless you.
You too. Bye.
You've landed on a station that is not ho-hum,
predictable,
average,
or status quo.
They'll be telling their grandchildren about it.
We are Sunshine 800 WSHO.
Thank you for sticking with us on the battlefield. And if you haven't yet, make sure you go find us on social media. We're everywhere, folks. We can do this show 5 days a week, so you can actually listen to not only us live 5 days a week, but you can listen to our podcast. We'll take this show and we'll actually upload it to our Spreaker account where you can listen to it again. So if you enjoy the show, you want to listen to it and kind of parse it and dissect it and kind of generate your own opinions, or you want to share it with someone, you can find us on Spreaker by simply doing a hashtag search for Lanterns Buzz. So Spreaker.com, just do a search for Lanterns Buzz, and you can find us, as well as you can find everybody else on the Lanterns Radio Network. The home for the Lanterns Radio Network is our website, lanterns.buzz. And you could go there and find other shows like On Fire, which is actually a very good show. It's Andrew Chavarria does that show on Sunday, and he is a preacher and does a really, really good job. I'm blessed to have two preachers on the Lanterns Radio Network. And there's others, like Conserva Weekend, the Paris Procopas Show, Intersection, the Mark Miller Show. Behind Enemy Lines is coming up, which is awesome. Also, I want to mention our Twitter account. You can find us in several places on Twitter. First and foremost, the show page on Twitter is @LanternsBuzz. So you can find us there and follow us and watch us tweet. And you can also communicate through us. I answer every question I could possibly answer on Twitter in the most honest way I can. And sometimes I get asked stupid questions and I give stupid answers. So, also you can find us at Paul Revere Again. You can find Trey at T-Rob Radio on Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/LanternsBuzz. And you can follow me at Chris Pilier, and you can follow Trey at T-Rob Radio. You can also follow us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Player.fm, Google+, iTunes, which we have our podcast there. You can subscribe to that if you like to use your iOS device. Or if you have an Android, you can go to Google Play and find us, and as well as Stitcher. Stitcher's got a pretty cool app, as well as Spreaker. And all of these places you can find us by simply doing the hashtag search on Lanterns Buzz. That's right, Dennis. We are everywhere. We are just spreading the light of truth. That's what Lanterns is all about, illuminating the light of truth. Also wanted to mention Vast Virtual Solutions. If you're looking for a web application or website, a simple website, or something very complicated to streamline your business, you can trust in Vast Virtual Solutions to help you do that in a professional way. Just visit vastvirtual.com or just give us a call, 504-382-2474. Also, GoDay.media. We're in the GoDay.media studios here at WSHO 800 AM, and Rob and Melissa have done a great job. I talked about Robert earlier. His business has really helped us develop our social media plan in order for us to be able to reach out to everybody. All those names I mentioned before of where we can be found was mentioned to us and recommended to us by Rob and Melissa, and they've given us a plan for each one. Also, last but not least, I am wearing the awesome shirts that I got from, or one of the shirts I got from Marshall over at dh-promotions.com. My lantern shirt. I'm very proud of it. I'm fitting in it very well. Wouldn't you say, Trey?
You're in it.
Okay. Well, thank you, dude. Appreciate that. All right, so we're talking about worldviews. And my question to you is, what worldview do you subscribe to? And if you don't know how to necessarily answer that question, that's okay, because quite honestly, long ago, I wasn't able to answer that question either, and I learned about worldviews and realized I was on the semi-right track, and I've kind of, I guess, worked myself into understanding how I can stay on the right track. And there's a bunch of worldviews out there. If you're a Muslim listening to the show, if you most likely subscribe to an Islamic worldview, right?
Bing!
Right. So if you are a progressive or a liberal, most likely you subscribe to a Marxist-Leninist worldview or a secular humanist worldview.
Or a combination of both.
Right. Or if you are, I don't know, a pantheist, then you'll be maybe into the cosmic humanism. Is it cosmic humanism?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's all these different worldviews, and if you don't know what worldview are, let's say you're a progressive.
There's 7 major ones.
Right. If you are a progressive, you subscribe to redistribution of wealth. You subscribe to radical egalitarianism, right? All these different facets of progressivism or liberalism come from Marxist-Leninism. And I'm not talking about Stalin or Lenin in the general sense of the behaviors that they took part of when they were here on Earth. I'm simply talking about the belief system that they applied, right? So the bottom line is that the biblical worldview does not have any cohesion to these other worldviews. There's really pretty much no, outside of maybe the cosmic humanism that actually believes in something outside of the earth. But even then and all, it's more of a, would you say, a collective worldview that we're all connected through our souls kind of thing?
Yeah, the only ones that actually believe in an external creator or an actual higher being would be biblical Christianity and Islam.
In Islam, right? So
everything else is just what you see is what you get. Now, look, the panentheistic view says that everything is spiritual. Mm-hmm. The pantheistic worldview is that everything is connected.
Right. So it's a collective salvation.
Or no, there's no salvation. It's just you have a human responsibility to do good because you're only given a certain amount of time here on the planet, and then your energy goes into the universe.
So it's kind of like Buddhism.
Buddhism, some aspects of Hinduism.
Okay.
If Hinduism wasn't so polytheistic, I mean, they have thousands of gods. So yeah, but those things, but one kind of begat the other anyway. So.
Okay, so let's focus on Islam and Christianity or biblical worldview. Right. So Islamic worldview and the biblical worldview. The Islamic worldview is a totalitarian or even fascistic worldview.
Very much so. I mean, Islam is completely intolerant. We've made the argument that Islam's not even a religion.
Right.
It's a life system. Right. Because Islam has banking, right, government, religion, right, dress, diet, marital. I mean, it has an explanation for every facet of life. So it is the most totalitarian view. It's in competition with a communist worldview.
Right, because
but even communism almost doesn't control life of an individual as much as Islam does.
Not directly.
Not directly.
Like in other words,
Islam may not tell. I mean, communism may not tell women what to wear.
Right.
But it may influence what women wear because they have no money and there's no freedom of choice, so they just have the same pitiful rags that their no income begats them.
Okay, so let's talk at a high level about the biblical worldview, and this is the way I see it, and tell me what you think. So I see the biblical worldview is that there is absolute truth, that the truest form of truth is God, right?
Right.
And that there are outside of the spiritual aspect of it, that within the realm that we live right now, prior to the afterlife, is that there are natural truths or natural laws that are absolute.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. So killing another human being and taking their right to life away from them,
murder is always going to be wrong.
That's correct. So if we compare this to, say, a Marxist worldview, first and foremost, Marxism at its purest form doesn't believe in anything.
It's atheistic and nihilistic at worst.
There is nothing absolute in Marxism. In fact, the nature of Marxist-Leninism is relativity.
Yeah, so it's whoever's truth is in power.
Right. So my concerns that I was talking about earlier with the culture and when I was expressing to Rob was that, and I was talking about Milo Yiannopoulos for a reason. I was like, I'm listening to this guy talk in a very vulgar way, trying to some way or another influence millennials.
Right.
And I said, Trey and I, we do a radio show, and we have to connect with new generations all the time.
Right.
There's people being born and growing up and turning on the radio and listening. And how do we connect to these people that are growing up and that are attached to this more vulgar form of entertainment and information?
A more crass.
Right. So we as entertainers, second, but informers first,
right,
have to know how to be able to communicate with those individuals. So I said that I am grounded in my principles, and I can't see myself talking about
pop culture,
or even at the most extremes, oral sex with millennials in order to try to get them to listen to my show. I can't put myself in that position for a lot of reasons.
Or float the idea that you're okay with homosexuality.
That's exactly right.
Right.
So what I was explaining to him is that what Milo Yiannopoulos is, very, very intelligent guy.
No doubt.
What he is what we would call 20 years ago an extremely left-wing person.
Yeah.
So now he is considered alt-right. He's considered the right. So the point I was trying to make with him is that Milo and people of the alt-right movement they're rejecting the biblical worldview, and they're participating in a Marxist-Leninist dialectic. Okay?
Correct.
Now, I don't want to get all crazy philosophical, but think about this, folks. If what I just said is correct, if this alt-right movement, and it's not mutually exclusive to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has become popular because he is tuned in to this new populism.
Right.
Those people were there. He just happened to tune into them. Right.
Right.
So let's forget about the Trump stuff. Talk about the people that are looking to Trump as a leader. These individuals are rejecting the absolute truth. They're attaching themselves to these very vulgar, very anti-politically correct, which I'm not necessarily always against, but to use it in order to be able to attracts people for the wrong reasons. It's not the principles anymore. So it's another phase of this dialectic. So if we participate in this, what ends up happening is we further progress the country to the left. And what becomes a reaction to that movement becomes something even further left.
Yes. There is what we're seeing right now within our political dialectic.
Right.
Between the right-left paradigm, between the Republican-Democrat paradigm, is what most people, if you're not familiar with, it's called the Overton window.
Right.
Okay, so everything has, for many years, been drug. Probably for the last 100 years, has just been constantly, and at times it's sped up, and at times, for instance, during the Reagan years, I don't know that things swung back right, but they didn't move any further left for those 8 years.
Right.
Because Daddy Bush and W came along and continued going to the left.
Right.
Right. But the way I see it is there's a similar duplicity within the church right now. Mm-hmm. The duplicity is that it wants to uphold the standard as laid out in scriptures.
Right.
But it's fighting its own relevance in the culture.
Right.
And so there is a duplicity of spirits. There is people who believe that they are saved, they are going to die and go to heaven one day. They are part of the family of God, but at the same time, the spirit that's in the world has been allowed into the church.
Right.
So you have this serve two masters, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Do we go the route of be more like the world,
right,
and hope that we can get enough Bible in that people are getting saved? Or do we shut the world out and see our numbers go down and we have no relevance in outreach anyway?
See, that's a brilliant point. Okay, and let's look at it from a political standpoint. So to me, Donald Trump is the result of the culture.
Absolutely.
In America, we have representatives, and they try to appeal to a part of the culture, and then their success is a reflection on how they've tuned in, right?
Right.
So whether or not you like Donald Trump or believe in Donald Trump, or you think he's going to win, or you like his principles and all, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is he has looked at the culture, whether he's truthful or not. He's tuned into a certain section of the culture, and he's reflected as that part of the culture. Now, whether that culture is a 51% of the culture or not is
still to be seen.
That's still to be seen.
But he has decided to become the standard bearer,
right,
for that reject tradition, reject for a large part conservatism,
right,
but to wrap himself in nationalism and populism and do it in a way that's crass and politically incorrect.
So last week we got a call from one of our other programs, a call from a guy that was kind of upset because we were talking about the culture instead of talking about Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And I guess we had a commercial that was bashing Trump or something like that.
Right.
When I talk to all of you that are listening right now that are questioning why I'm not supporting Donald Trump, it's because Donald Trump doesn't come from the same worldview I do. At least he doesn't present himself in that manner.
Yeah.
So he is reflecting a part of the culture that I do not attach to, or don't subscribe to that belief system or that set of values.
Without a doubt, the moment you support a guy like Trump,
yes,
if you hold Christian conservative biblical worldview values,
right,
you instantly have to compromise.
That's exactly right.
Like, for instance, let me give you a real world example. I truly don't believe Sean Hannity recovers from this.
No, I don't.
He has if you want to tune into a show where he's going to, for 3 hours, explain every single thing and why Donald Trump is Ronald Reagan, tune into the Sean Hannity show.
Right.
But he will never again, for the rest of his career, be able to lift himself up as some sort of conservative standard bearer,
right,
or some sort of traditional republicanism, small government.
Right.
He can't do it. And
right.
Coulter's the same way.
Right.
They have traded for the hope of victory.
It's exactly right. That's their goal, victory.
And being their goal was to defeat Hillary.
Right.
And so they want a guy who's going to get just as nasty and vicious and can punch back the people
right.
that have, for otherwise he views has kept good conservatives, principled politicians
right.
from getting ahead.
Right.
Hit pieces, bad questions, no coverage, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So I think he will pay for that in his long-term career. I can't tune in to Sean Hannity anymore.
Right. He's dead to me.
And listen to him with any sort of credibility.
Right. And
because he sold out.
And that's the kind of the way I look at it. And look, I'm talking from a principled standpoint.
Correct.
Okay?
And look, and just for the people in the chat room, and you don't see this right now, but I mean, the chat room is pretty lively, and I'll kind of show you some things. We're not talking. Listen, we're not speaking from. We're not two pastors speaking and prognosticating about the fate of the church right now. Okay, we're talking the entire big picture, the United States of America,
right,
where we live right now.
That's right.
Okay, we're not talking about being of the world, but we have to be in it.
Right.
That's biblical.
Right.
Okay. So anybody who's talking about, well, Jesus didn't talk about a biblical worldview, we're not talking the theology of this.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So you've got to kind of step away and try and understand and see where we're going with this, because even this is the part where we started the show. The reason I don't think the culture is any worse off than it ever has been is because I can look at history 4,000 years ago and see things really weren't much different than they are now. People lied, cheated, steal.
Right.
All kind of sexual immorality. The only difference is now you can do it and tweet it to 25,000 people.
Right. So let me say this before we go to a break, okay? If you at some point in your life look at opportunity and a way to achieve opportunity, but not being truthful about how to get there. In other words, if you see that it doesn't matter what means to get there, it's just the ends that matter,
right?
You have subscribed for that position a Marxist-Leninist worldview.
And for those who want to take a more church position, you have allowed a spirit of the world, a mammon spirit, to govern you at that moment.
Right. So let's expand this thought for a second. If you want something so badly that you have to deny your principles to get it, whether that's stealing, whether that's lying, whatever, because you just want to get that thing, and then once you get it, then you're going to be a good person. Right. That's what happens to people in government. They set up these walls for themselves, and once they get into government, then they go, well, I'm gonna give up a little bit of my principles in order to get this, so I can control more of this. Right?
Is that not coveting?
Yes.
Is that not stealing?
Yes.
See, listen. What makes, for me, if you support Trump throughout all this, is that it's not that he was calling Ted Cruz lying Ted.
Right.
He was literally doing something that we don't talk about very much, which is bearing false witness.
That's right.
He was giving a bad testimony about another person.
Right.
You align yourself with somebody who has coveted things his entire life, other women, coveted other people's wives. We don't have to get real philosophical. We're just talking about the top 10.
Right.
And there's real evidence that this is, look, Trump is, say what you want, Trump is also, I believe, some judgment come upon us the further along he gets in this thing.
Right.
I mean, we just think that, oh God, we got to get behind Trump because we got to stop Hillary.
Right.
But I tell the Christians all the time who say, oh well, Hillary, God can use Trump. Well, you know what? God can use Hillary too.
That's right.
But you don't want to admit
and
that.
Bernie Sanders,
because that doesn't fit your worldview.
That's right.
So you're willing to compromise your worldview to support Trump, but you're not willing to compromise your worldview to support Hillary.
Right.
And I'm not saying you should support Hillary. I'm just saying I ain't supporting either one of them.
Right.
At this moment.
That's the thing. So
because I'm
not going to be out there, rah-rah-rahing for them.
I ain't phone banking. I'm not going marching the street. I ain't writing a check.
Right.
But I am going to tell you that when he does something or news comes out or information comes out, I'm going to interpret those events and that information through my lens, which is a biblical worldview. And if it bothers you, then check yourself in the mirror because maybe it's your worldview that needs to be altered.
All right, folks. So we got a little bit more of this. We're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we get back, we're going to get into more of this discussion. And hell, we may even talk about some other things. So stick with us live on the battlefield. You're listening to Chris and Trey from the Lanterns Radio Network, WSHO 800 AM. We'll be right back after this short pause.
Are you looking for a reasonable and affordable way to enhance your image or your company's image on the internet? Are you looking for ways to leverage internet technology to streamline your business? An upgraded website or web application is the way to go. Vast Virtual Solutions is a technology company that specializes in developing websites that operate on the cutting edge with the ability to save you and your business time and money. Visit vastvirtual.com for a business quote today. vastvirtual.com.
Our listeners have come to expect a lot from our station.
The safety of this entire planet may depend on what you say to me.
Well, we hope we don't let you down. WSHO is Sunshine 800.
For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He adorns the humble with salvation. Hello, this is Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council in Washington. Do you ever struggle with the sense that maybe God is a little too busy for your daily concerns? Even in light of his promises that even the hairs on your head are numbered, it can be difficult to believe that the flooded basement or the unexpected tax bill makes it onto his radar. Thankfully, Scripture reassures us in many places throughout the Old and New Testaments that the God of the universe actually does concern himself with each of us and our daily struggles. Not only that, but he goes so far as to say that he dances over us and he takes pleasure in us. He sees every detail of our lives and delights in our acknowledgement of him. The good things we do with no expectation of reward reap blessings from his generous hand. No other God loves his people the way the God of the Bible does. For more, go to TonyPerkins.com.
Folks, thank you for sticking with us on the battlefield. Look, there's a lot of people in the chat room. We're going to maybe talk about some of the things they're asking. Make sure if you also want to connect to us, you can go to our Twitter page at Lanterns Buzz. You can also reach out to us at Paul Revere. Again, that's my Twitter, and Trey's Twitter is at TRob Radio, and we watch it all day. So reach out to us. We will engage on what we call the battlefield of ideas. That's why we call this the Battlefield Live, and we illuminate the truth.
So, because we're running very quickly out of time, what were you hoping in talking with Rob, or even in today with the culture? Kind of what is your...
I was just kind of telling him, we were talking about, how do we... reach out to a new audience. It's a business discussion we're having, and I was explaining some of my concerns that I didn't want to sacrifice principle over popularity or business, quite honestly. I would much rather, make $30,000 a year and be stuck on principles and make $1 million a year than be a bad, terrible person, because the afterlife is very ugly if you don't live a virtuous life. So I guess, if we kind of swing this back around to the discussions about Trump, for instance, I don't think our position on Donald Trump has done anything to help us necessarily right now with our popularity. Or
so you're talking about our organization, so Lanterns.Buzz, and taking so many strong anti-Trump positions.
And it's not so much anti-Trump, it's anti what Trump stands or what he's representing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Trump is probably a nice guy. He may be the best president we've ever had.
And listen, for us, would you agree with this? Trump has probably just been a really good tool for comparison and contrasting in the culture what the correct principles are.
Absolutely. And look, at this point, we don't know what's going to come, where we're going to be 10 years from now. We may be, where we were in 1988 when the country was flourishing because of Reagan. Trump could be the best thing. And I could bite my tongue about what I was talking about with Trump. But the bottom line is, if you listen to what the man says, if you see how he presents himself, he's working through a progressive liberal prism. He's working through the means to an ends tactic. I don't look to that. I understand politics. I understand how politicians work. But if we're complaining about establishment, if we're complaining about politicians being politicians, he is doing what politicians do. Now, he's appealing to a segment of the population, and maybe when he gets in there, he becomes Ronald Reagan. I don't know. But I got to take him for his word. I also am educated enough to know that if he uses those tactics now, it's very likely he's going to use those tactics when he gets into office.
I tell you what'll make him change his tactics if all of a sudden something's not working.
Right.
See, that's the pragmatism, and that's the danger of what he's doing.
Right.
Is that as long as what he's doing is working, he's prone to continue doing it.
And that's populism. Populism is detached from principle.
But just from an individual standpoint, if it's working for him, the pragmatic side of him says, hey, I'm just going to keep on doing it.
That's right.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right. And I think that's kind of where he's at now, why he's still disrupting things.
Because look, there have been times where he's sounded conservative, and then there's times where it didn't benefit him to sound conservative. Look, he's the one who said that I can change and I can be flexible. Right. And as this thing progresses, you'll probably see me changing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been it.
That's a means to an end.
There should have been a mass exodus off of the Trump train at that point.
Right. But the fact that it's not is where I get concerned, because that's where the culture is not saying they're jumping off because they don't see it.
Yeah,
right?
In fact, they're buckling in even tighter.
Right. So at some point, you were talking about pragmatism earlier, from a voter standpoint. The decision that you make, I'm talking to everybody that's listening, The decision that you make ultimately is your decision. You have to live with that decision. The results of what you vote for, eventually you'll pay the price for it, or it'll reap you rewards, right?
Here's a question for you, Chris. So if you guys are 10,000% anti-Trump, what or who?
I don't even know what that means.
I know. I figured you. My thing to that person,
I'm not anti-Trump. I'm anti what Trump stands for.
Is that because you're for Trump, if you tune into this radio program to be validated in your compromise of principles, you're tuning into the wrong station.
That's right.
You're tuning into the wrong show.
Right.
You're not going to get some validation from Chris and Trey because you have sold out your principles and you need voices that come piping through your speakers to make you feel good about being validated about your poor principles and the way you've stewarded them.
And it's much more than just electing somebody to go represent us in politics.
For us, it is.
Well, for me, it's much more than that because this is an opportunity for us to explain what has made America great in the first place. It is not what...
Correct.
There's nothing that I've heard from Donald Trump. He may have it all in his head and understands the Constitution. He understands what freedom and liberty is all about. But I've never heard him say it. So I can't see his heart.
Yeah, but I can tell you what he did say. I can tell you that he said that he's never felt the need to read the Constitution ever in his 69 years of life.
Yeah.
That's his words.
Right. So
maybe he does, but it's through osmosis. Now watch. So immediately people get their feelings hurt.
Right.
When we say things like that we're not going to validate your compromise of principles. And so you know what? Now we're closet liberals.
Well, it's
Chris and Trey, closet liberals.
Well, see, that goes with the territory,
you know.
And see if this
so
goes
because
back,
we're not for your compromised candidate.
All right, so let me ask you this.
Let me ask you this.
So one of the big things that Donald Trump has been very much against and been very effective is political correctness.
Right.
Political correctness is basically being critical of someone because of their view and keeping them quiet by criticizing them over and over and over and over and over again. So when somebody tells me that I'm a closet liberal, that's an attempt at political correctness, trying to correct me politically.
Correct.
Right? And it's because it's around a demagogue. It's not around principles. I am conservative, and you can call me whatever you want, sticks and stones.
Right.
Right? The bottom line is my principles determine who I am. I live
and
a life.
Who I support.
And my behavior, I'm not a perfect human being. Ted Cruz wasn't perfect. I do things that are not conservative sometimes because I'm a human being.
Look, if you right now what are we in, June?
Right.
If you right now in June know how you're going to vote in November, great. What are you tuning in to hear me say who you should and shouldn't vote for anyway?
Because the tactic is to try to keep you quiet and try to not let you talk about it by calling you a closet liberal.
But the sad thing is that, okay, so you're for Trump, listening audience. If you're out there and you're for Trump, then be for Trump.
Yeah.
It's America. But I don't have to be for Trump.
Make the case.
But just because I'm not for Trump doesn't automatically make me for Hillary.
Just because somebody says that he's going to make America great again doesn't make it so.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, tell me how you're going to do it.
There's no evidence whatsoever that he even understands what made America great to begin with.
That's right. To me, what made America great and made us different is not because we had people that were Americans. It's because of the principles that we adhere to.
Well, de Tocqueville's definition in Democracy in America was the best one.
That's right.
America is great because America is good. And if America stops being good, America will cease to be great. So if Trump says we need to make America great again, then you are by default saying that America is no longer good again. And the only place that you can go to make America good again is in the hearts and in the minds of men and women individually. And if you don't hold to a biblical Christian world view, you have no chance of being good for the greater good. Even contrary to my buddy Derek, a Muslim worldview could never have created the United States of America.
So Trey, let me make sure I understand this. Are you saying that a guy? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So are you saying that a guy that said Paris Hilton looked hot at 12 is probably not a good idea to?
Listen. I understand if a guy looks at a 12-year-old little girl and comments that she's pretty. What I have a hard time with is saying that, and then in the next sentence, saying that his wife and him then turned around and watched her sex tape. That's weird. Okay. So,
or you take a picture with your daughter on your lap next to two parrots humping.
But wait, but then 3 sentences later, 3 sentences after that, he then comments about how phenomenal his 21-year-old, 6-foot-tall, blonde daughter's body is. So, first of all, I knew Paris Hilton when she was 12, and she was a beautiful girl. My wife and I, my girlfriend. It was his girlfriend at the time. Him and Melania weren't even married yet. My girlfriend and I watched the Paris Hilton sex tape since I've known Paris since she was a little girl.
Was that on Stern?
Yes.
Good
and then
Lord.
follows up and says that his daughter has the absolute best body in the world. And oh, by the way, if it wasn't his daughter, he'd probably want to date her. You go on ahead and vote for that, and let the hypocrisy just own your hypocrisy. Just own it. When you go to church on Sunday, just know down deep inside that that's what you believe in.
Dude, I'm going to be walking into that voting booth, because I'm going on a diet tomorrow.
I'll let you know the day before.
I'm going to walk into that voting booth if I had to walk into a Popeyes after started my diet. I'd be like, oh man, I really, really want to.
Hey, listen, one of the options,
a chicken leg.
One of the options is don't vote. That's an option.
It is an option.
It's an option.
I just can't not vote.
I know.
I have to vote. I can't complain if I don't vote.
I don't buy into that, but we'll save that for next week.
All right, folks. Look, I want to thank you for joining us on the battlefield today. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LanternsBuzz. If you don't agree with us, fine. Tweet us. Let's talk. We're on the battlefield, folks. It's always ugly on the battlefield. Thank you for joining us on the battlefield. You've been listening to Chris and Trey from Lanterns Radio Network. Check out lanterns.buzz as well as battlefield.buzz. Make sure you follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/lanternsbuzz. It's been a pleasure to be able to talk with you. We'll be back next Friday at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. Thank you for joining us.